Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. There's another paid request, this time from Edward. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, topics, reactions, reviews, re-reviews, commentaries, rankings lists, whatever it may be, feel free to send them either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. And Edward wanted me to react once again to two more of these comparison videos between the 80s cartoon and the 2003 Ninja Turtles cartoon. And I'll probably try to put both of these parts together. So we'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for that, and let's get into it.
Round 7. The villains.
Alright.
The villains. The Turtles have to use their ninja skills on someone. I mean, without these baddies, who would the Turtles have to fight? Well, I guess they'd fight each other.
Their self-esteem.
Lord knows we get enough of that with Raph and Leo's arguments. There have been tons of enemies, especially with all the continuities out there. Most of the enemies were only exclusive to certain turtle incarnations, but there were a few enemies who appeared in almost all of them. The main one being Shredder, of course. For round 7, we'll be comparing Baxter Stockman, Leatherhead, the Rat King, and the Triceratons.
Well, Leatherhead isn't really fair, because Leatherhead isn't really a villain in the 2003 cartoon. But
I'll be leaving Shredder for last, since he's the most well-known villain and because I have a lot to say about him.
Sure.
I know I'm leaving out certain villains, such as Bebop, Rocksteady, Slash, Karai, Bishop, Hun. But like everything else in the countdown so far, we'll only be comparing characters that appeared in both the classic and the 2003 cartoon.
I guess that makes
Besides,
sense.
it doesn't mean we're not going to mention any of the others. Anyway, let's begin. Classic Baxter Stockman versus 2003 Baxter Stockman. Baxter Stockman, a mad scientist who appeared in both incarnations. The two of them worked with the Shredder, but then went up against him due to being turned into freaks because of him. They're both also responsible for creating the Mousers, robots which originally had the purpose to seek and destroy rats to help New York City with its rat infestation problem, but were then used for destructive means, which caused trouble for the Turtles, Splinter, and April. The two of them appear to be rather tragic characters as well, but like April, the two of them are extremely different, and it's not just their appearance, but in both story and personality. The classic Baxter Stockman was a much more comedic villain, despite being a self-proclaimed genius. He's rather clumsy, forgetful, and at times is even pretty dim-witted. He started out looking for a company to mass-produce his Mousers, but no one was willing to, finding his idea to be dangerous for their business, until Baxter met the Shredder, who wanted to use his Mousers to track and destroy Splinter. After that failed, he was put into the Crazy House for a while, until Shredder broke him out to get his assistance again. After numerous...
I forgot about the Crazy House stuff. But, I mean, before he goes on to give my 2 cents on this, the classic Baxter Stockman, I do like the old one. I like that he turns to a fly. I like that aspect. Not just because it makes me think of David Cronenberg's The Fly, but I think that's a cool... That'd be something cool to see done in a live-action movie, if done practical. Again, if you have a transformation scene that's like an American Werewolf in London, howling type of transformation scene, except instead of a werewolf, it's this stuff that, a little bit of inspiration from David Cronenberg's The Fly as well, but you see an actual transformation. I think that'd be very cool to witness. But I do think as a character, he's better in the 2003 cartoon because there's an actual character. I mean, there's a whole episode dedicated to him called Insane in the Membrane, where it's about his mom and his love of his mom, but then he got a new body, but it's falling apart, and it's affecting his mind, so he's looking at April, but he's visualizing his mom. Very, psychological aspect of the episode, which... none of that is approaching the 80s cartoon, so I think the 2003 actually did a better job molding that character a bit more.
Failures, and at one point Baxter betraying the Shredder, Baxter was sent to the Technodrome, where he was put into a machine where he would be executed. But due to a fly coming inside with him, the two merged together and Baxter Stockman became Fly. Since then, he's been hell-bent on getting revenge on the Shredder and the Turtles. I actually feel bad for him. He wasn't that bad of a guy compared to the other villains. He was just misunderstood and went crazy, wanting revenge against the Shredder and the very world that treated him wrong. Heck, even the Turtles treated him like trash, stealing his van and other equipment and leaving him tied up on the street while they did so. I know the Mousers attacked Splinter, tore apart their lair, and destroyed April's house, but he only made the Mousers. It was actually more Shredder's fault, since using the Mousers that way was more his intention to begin with. He didn't have any friends or allies until he became friends with a sentient computer who assisted Baxter for
Oh yeah, I
several
forgot about that
episodes.
computer.
That was unfortunately destroyed in the final episode Baxter appeared in, called Revenge of the Fly. Speaking of which, in the same episode, right when Baxter was about to use a
That
special
computer
break-in to
reminds me
make
of the
himself
2003
normal again,
episode called
the Turtles
Nano.
kick him into a dimensional portal and leave him there, stuck forever.
AI,
Now that's
artificial
just sad.
intelligence.
All he wanted was to be human again. 2003 Baxter Stockman, unlike his classic counterpart, was much more successful. His Mousers were accepted and seen as...
And the 2003 cartoon version is definitely much more inspired by the original comic books from Mirage. This is much more of how he was in the
a scientific breakthrough.
original
However,
comics.
despite his success, he was greedy and wanted to make more
I always thought
money,
it'd be like
so
an
he used his
evil
Mousers
Miles
to rob
Dyson.
banks and steal money.
Terminator 2,
Originally,
Joe
April
Morton
O'Neil
playing
was his
him.
assistant, but then when she found out about this, he tried to kill her. This is
Yeah.
also how Baxter Stockman in the original comics was portrayed. We later find out that Baxter Stockman has been working for the Shredder. But like classic Baxter Stockman, he eventually betrayed him. Every time Baxter Stockman has crossed or failed the Shredder, a piece of him was removed. So every time he appeared, he looked different. Like his classic cartoon counterpart, he just wanted to be normal again, which almost happens.
Again, that's one aspect I did like, is that each time we saw him, he would lose like an eye, or he'd be in a wheelchair, and then he got to be a fucking brain in a jar. And psychologically, that makes you go, you know, just what these guys did to his body. It's a lot more graphic than you would think.
After he stripped down to being nothing but a brain in a jar, he stopped working for the Shredder and instead worked for a character by the name of Bishop. He tries to clone himself a new body, which goes well at first, until this happens.
Yeah.
No! What's happening to me?
This seriously has to be one of the most graphic episodes of Ninja Turtles I have ever seen. You think he would have died by the end of this episode, but he didn't. I guess the creators wanted him to stick around since killing him off might appear too dark, as if the episode itself wasn't dark enough already. My guess is they just wanted to keep him around so they could make him suffer even more. Again, very sad. But lucky for him, things work out for him in Fast Forward, so unlike classic Baxter Stockman, this one got a happy ending. Kind of ironic if you think about it. The classic Baxter Stockman from the more lighthearted comical series gets a bad ending, but the Baxter Stockman from the darker and much more serious series gets a happy one.
I forgot about
The
that.
2003 Baxter Stockman was a very interesting character. We get to see his origins, which reveal he wasn't really always a bad guy, and that he does have a gentle side to him when it comes to his mother. Also, the fact that he always looked different was pretty cool. You seriously never knew what to expect. And he could either look very cool or very weird. When I was a kid, I liked the classic Baxter Stockman because of all his schemes involving insects, which I was fascinated by at the time. The newer Baxter, on the other hand, seems like a much more developed character. And as I said earlier, the fact that he looks different every episode makes me look forward to seeing him again and again. I'd have to say this match goes to the 2003 Baxter Stockman. Another point for the 2003 series.
I agree with that. That's fair.
Classic Triceratons versus 2003 Triceratons. You might be asking yourself, who the hell are the Triceratons?
No, I know who they are.
The Triceratons are a race of super strong humanoid dinosaurs from space who first appeared in the Ninja Turtles comic books. One was included in the classic action figure line. One is seen fighting the Turtles on the cover of the NES game,
I remember
Manhattan
that cover.
Project, which is awkward since they don't even appear in the video game itself whatsoever.
Exactly.
They eventually make an appearance.
They're on the cover, but they're
episodes
not
of
in the
classic
fucking
series
game.
Entitled The Dark Turtle. You know, the episode where Donatello becomes a Batman-like superhero. As you'd expect, they come to Earth to try to take it over, giving the Turtles a hard time until Donatello tricks them that the Turtles are the dominant species and that they've already taken over the planet. He also tricks them into thinking he has destructive powers. The Triceratons then flee and go back to their home planet. This is the first and last time we ever see them. In the 2003 series, the Turtles accidentally get teleported to another planet. and are eventually transported to the Triceraton's homeworld. Like the classic ones, they're after galactic conquest. They're also after a robot called
Yeah, there's a
Fugitoid,
once again,
who
this is
has the
based on the
knowledge to build a
comics.
teleportation device, and they
Very
intend to
early
use it
on in the
for war.
comics, they went
The Turtles
into
rescued
space.
the Fugitoid and returned to Earth with him. But as a result, the Triceratons invaded Earth and pretty much took over the planet to search for him. That was, until the Fugitoid gave his life and the Triceraton leader was taken down once and for all. The Triceratons then leave Earth and never return.
Yeah.
At least not until fast forward. So who are the better Triceratons? Well, the older ones seemed a little more generic, not to mention we don't see much of them. Remember, they only appear in one episode. However, with the newer ones, we see their planet, their culture, we see that some Triceratons are actually good guys. As you can imagine, the newer Triceratons also appear in many more episodes. My only gripe with them is that they almost all look the same. At least the older Triceratons were easier to tell apart since they had different colors and such. But because we barely get to see the classic Triceratons, I'd have to say I like the ones from the 2K3 series more since we get to know them a lot better. It's safe to say the 2003 Triceratons win this round, and the 2003 series gets another point.
And that's a fair one. I agree with that.
Classic Rat King versus 2003 Rat King.
Yeah, that's one that I would give to the 80s cartoon, to be fair. I mean, kind of the reverse of the previous one. Rat King is in the 80s cartoon a lot more. I mean, he's actually a character. The Rat King only appears one episode in the 2003 cartoon where it was like this clone, I think, of Agent Smith. I mean, he'll explain it. And it looked like Weapon X from X-Men for one little bit. It gets defeated. I'm not sure if it's that same one. Well, again, he'll go into detail. And then it appears in one episode where Leo's fighting it and the Turtles are fighting it. And I don't know if they thought they were going to bring that character back again, but they never did. Like, this one actually has a personality, actually talks, is in multiple episodes, is trying to possess Splinter, control Splinter. So this one has a personality, has a goal, has talks, you see him more often. In all fairness, I'd have to give it to this one. So
A strange man who lives not alone, but in the company of hundreds of rats. The Rat King has appeared in the comics, the video games, and both cartoons. Both shun themselves from humanity, dress covered in rags and old torn clothing, and talk with creepy voices. They also, of course, live up to their names with their ability to control rats. The classic Rat King was obsessed with rats to the point where he thought rats should be the dominant species. He hates it when people talk badly of rats, often taking it personally and getting really angry. He lived in the sewers and controlled rats with a flute, no doubt a reference to the famous story, The Pied Piper. He's even able to take over Splinter's mind with the flute and turn him against the Turtles. He's actually rather cunning, able to take down Leatherhead rather easily, so he's a dangerous and worthy foe for the Ninja Turtles themselves. Other than that, he's rather generic. His goals are obviously world domination, wanting to overthrow humans and have everything to his rats and himself. I'm really interested in learning more about his origins to see why he thinks this way, but it's never revealed. I guess that's a problem the classic series had. Either the bad guys didn't get their backstories explained, or there's not a lot to their backstories at all. My guess is that he was once a scientist.
but that's a lot of cartoons back in the day.
Soda cans and potions that can turn people into rats. And he was hurt by humanity so bad that he had to go
I mean,
down
like,
to
do
the
you
sewers
know
and
much
felt more
about the
accepted
bad
by
guys
the rats,
of
and
Rescue
later he
Rangers
could
or
manipulate them. The 2003
Heathcliff
Rat King's
or
origin is
Garfield?
shown, but there's still some mystery to him. The 2003
Are there really
Rat
bad
King
guys
was
in Garfield?
originally an
I guess so.
experimental super soldier made by Bishop, a government agent who wanted to make super soldiers to combat alien invasions. However, when the lab was destroyed and flooded, the super soldier drifted into the sewers and washed up at an abandoned factory, where he's been living since. He's not trying to take over the city like his...
I do love. See, this is the thing. Like, I know you can't see it well on a laptop, but there's a nice lighting, mood for this abandoned
classic
area.
counterpart. He just wants to be left alone. Also, they never really explain how he's able to control rats in this series. The only reason he fought with the Turtles was because they invaded his territory. They wanted to use the abandoned factory to train, but they ended up having to take on the Rat King in order to escape since he saw them as a threat. Although the Rat King is made to be closer to his comic book counterpart in the 2003 series, he's still very different from the comics. In the comics, he's much creepier, and he has a completely different background story. He's only appeared in 3 episodes, opposed to the classic Rat King who appeared in many more.
I don't remember
so
him
which Rat
3.
King is better? Well, they're both mysterious, creepy, and formidable opponents for the Ninja Turtles. But in all honesty, I'd have to say I prefer the classic Rat King, but only because he has more of a personality. The newer Rat King was just depressing, always going on and on about how he's a monster and should be feared. He was also kind of psychotic and scary. The classic Rat King, on the other hand, was a bigger threat to the Turtles since he lived in the same place as them, the sewers. I'd have to say when it comes right down to it, the classic Rat King is the big cheese. Here's a point to the classic series.
Yeah, that's a fair
Classic
statement.
Leatherhead versus 2003 Leatherhead, an alligator who mutated thanks to being exposed to the same mutagen that mutated the Turtles. He's appeared in the comics and the cartoons and was portrayed differently in each.
But in
In
Bayou
fact,
Billy,
his 2 cartoon incarnations have almost nothing in common. Classic Leatherhead was an evil Cajun gator who lived in Florida, which I always found kind of weird. Don't people with Cajun accents come from New Orleans and not Florida? Anyway, he started off as a regular
I don't know,
gator,
maybe he
was
moved.
infamous for his size, but because he swam in a lake and
Or maybe some inbreeding.
he mutated
He
himself.
had a cousin
He
from
first
New
appeared
Orleans.
terrorizing the punk frogs and appears in several other episodes. He also kind of has
I
a catchphrase.
guarantee.
I guarantee.
I guarantee. I guarantee.
Oh, he's psychic?
Guarantee.
I swear, I have not
Other
seen
than
this
that,
before.
There's not much to say about him. He's just a bully who likes to terrorize those smaller
He's
and
a
weaker than him
dickhead.
for his own amusement and
Ooh,
desires to
April
have
O'Neil
people
and
as
Chain,
his
there you
slaves
go.
and pets. He
Some
did
Princess
have a rather
Leia
interesting
shit.
design and a cool voice, which was provided by Jim Cummings, who's known for doing the voice of Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. He also voiced one of the punk frogs and at one point even voiced the Shredder for a while. The new Leatherhead, believe it or not, isn't a villain at all. You heard me. Despite seeming to be an enemy at first, it was under different circumstances. Generally, he's an ally to the Turtles who fights alongside them and helps them out whenever he can. Also, his origin is much different and much more complicated than his classic cartoon counterpart. He was flushed into the sewers as a baby and fed by aliens living in the sewers known as the Utroms, who we'll talk about later on. He was exposed to the same mutagen
He's
as the
better in the
Turtles and
2003
thus
cartoon.
mutated. He became extremely intelligent. You could even say he's as smart as Donatello. However, when the Utroms were teleported back to their home world, Leatherhead was left behind. At first, he was tricked that the Turtles were his enemies by Baxter Stockman, who promised Leatherhead that he'd get reunited.
He gets in
with the
bouts of
Utroms.
anger,
but
too.
after learning the truth, he became their friend, giving his life to save them. But that wasn't the last they heard of him. He actually survived. Later on, he turned up being experimented on by Bishop, but the Turtles helped him escape. However, Leatherhead became more aggressive due to the traumatizing experience by the hands of Bishop, and had a harder time controlling his anger, resulting in him attacking others whether they be friend or foe. But despite this, he continued to aid the Turtles when he was needed. So which Leatherhead do I like better? Well, I'd have to say I like the newer one, though it might be considered cheating since technically he's not really a villain. While the classic Leatherhead was a cool and memorable villain, the newer one, despite not being a bad guy, is a much more interesting character. I also think it makes more sense that he be an ally to the Turtles. After all, aquatic reptiles need to stick together. Plus, I like how he has 2 sides of himself, an intellectual scientist and a raging beast. Sort of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. His eyes also change in order to show which side is in control, which is an awesome effect. I'd have to say the winner of this match is the 2003 Leatherhead, meaning another point to the 2003 series.
Very nice.
Classic Shredder versus 2003
I have a feeling he's going to say the classic Shredder. Because here's the thing. The voice of Shredder... Like Shredder is a fun character to watch in the 80s cartoon. I love the voice actor. He was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as Uncle Phil. May he rest in peace. He had a lot of energy and drive as that character. The 2003 Shredder, though, is much more dangerous, much more evil, much more vicious, much more intimidating. So, that's why I looked at it as Shredder. So, classic Shredder is more fun character, but I think 2003 Shredder is a better Shredder. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, this one is more fun to watch, but this one fits the evil much better.
Time for the big bad guy showdown featuring the most well-known villain in all of Ninja Turtles, Shredder. He's been in almost every incarnation of the Ninja Turtles, and till this day he's portrayed as their arch nemesis. Because of this, he's also one of the most memorable villains ever and will always be around to cause trouble for the Turtles for years to come. First, let's begin with the history of the Shredder from his very first appearance in the comics. Amato Yoshi, the owner of Splinter, was part of the Foot Clan and was one of its best warriors. He had a rival named Oroku Nage. The two of them were in love with a woman named Tang Shen, but in the end, it was Yoshi who won her affection. Jealous, Nagi confronted her and demanded she be with him, but when she refused, he beat her down. Yoshi came in and witnessed this, and in blind rage, killed Nage. Because Yoshi had just killed a member of his own clan, he had to flee with Tang Shen and his pet Splinter to New York. Back in Japan, Nagi's brother, Oroku Saki, also known as the Shredder, wanted revenge for the death of his brother. So he came to America leading another branch of the Foot Clan and killed both Tang Shen and Yoshi. Splinter was left homeless until he found the Turtles, mutated with them, and raised them. 13 years later, it turns out Splinter had been training the Turtles to fulfill their mission, kill the Shredder and avenge the deaths of Yoshi and Tang Shen. They fight Shredder and the Foot Clan ninjas in an epic battle on top of a building, and after defeating them, Leonardo tries to get Shredder to commit an honorable suicide, or seppuku for short, but Shredder suicide bombs himself, attempting to take the Turtles with him. This all happened in the very first issue. You heard me right, Shredder dies in the first issue of the comics. Later on, he returns, ambushing the Turtles and nearly killing Leonardo in the process. The Turtles, Casey, and April flee to the countryside.
Wait, because they didn't think it'd be more than one issue.
And we find out that
And people enjoyed it, so then they furthered it along.
The Turtles kill off the clones and burn the remains to make sure Shredder never returns. But by killing off Shredder for good, they screwed up, since the Foot Clan divided and went into an all-out war with one another, getting many innocent bystanders injured and even killed in the process. Shredder didn't really appear that often in the original comics, only appearing in the first issue and his clones appearing in 3 or 4 more. So if that's the case, why did he appear in the first cartoon so often? Well, remember, the classic cartoon was made for the sake of an action figure deal, and part of that deal was for Shredder to be in the show often so that way he could be more marketable for the toy line. Now then, in the classic series, Shredder and Krang were the main villains. As I said earlier in the battle, Splinter was a...
Plus, all those cartoons usually had at least one main villain. I mean, a lot of other villains would pop up, but like G.I. Joe, you have Cobra. And He-Man, you have Skeletor. There's other villains, but usually have at least one main villain. Batman, it'd be the Joker. The other villains would pop up, but we'd have the Joker multiple times. So, again.
Originally a human named Amato Yoshi, who trained ninjas of the Foot Clan in Japan. But when he was framed by Oroku Saki, the Shredder, he fled to America. Meanwhile, when Shredder took control, he made all the ninjas...
I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's pretty much all background that I already know, and most people...
We just know that Krang was banished from Dimension X and cast into this...
I think most people would know if they watch these cartoons.
What he looked like before is sort of revealed in the episode Invasion of the
Krang, I will say, his voice annoyed me, even as a kid.
Could this be what he looked like before losing his body? Shredder and Krang were always trying to power the Technodrome, which was...
And that was always a weird body, like a naked man body, pinhead body, that Krang would put himself in. Here's a giant golf ball. I mean, it's a cool design of the Technodrome, but it does look like a giant golf ball.
As far as villains go, despite being very menacing, they weren't really threatening. Shredder acted childish and whiny, and when he fought, he was usually defeated in a comical manner. Krang is also funny, especially when he talks. He sounds like an old lady with gas. They also had 2 mutant henchmen named Bebop and Rocksteady, who were originally human until Shredder mutated them so they could become more useful, which is kind of ironic since Bebop and Rocksteady...
Yeah, and one of them was played by fucking Sheamus in that 2016 bullshit film. Guy's so white, you need sunglasses to watch him.
You could say that Shredder was
Fucking
their
blind
father,
ya.
Krang their mother, and Bebop and Rocksteady the retarded children.
You couldn't say that nowadays.
The last time I let you sit on my lap and stare.
One big happy family. The 2003 Shredder was done much differently. He's much more serious, ruthless, and much more dangerous. Like the classic one, he's the Turtles' arch nemesis and is always coming up with evil schemes for world domination. Unlike the classic Shredder, he doesn't live in a technodrome. He lives in a building. A lot of people find this lame, but this building is filled with surprises. It has an armory filled with weapons, robots, and other technological marvels for the Foot Clan. It has different laboratories where different experiments are held, such as cloning the Shredder, and even a room where mystical elemental beings dwell that are under his command. This Shredder is kind of like Lex Luthor. His alter ego, Orokusaki, is seen as a rich and well-known man who's made New York City a better place to live. But this is just a mask for all the illegal things he does on the side. He doesn't just control the Foot Clan, he also controls a gang called the Purple Dragons and the New York Mob. Instead of Bebop and Rocksteady, this Shredder has Hun, a former gang leader, as his right-hand man. Hun appears like a big brute at first, but later reveals himself to be rather smart and much more competent than Bebop and Rocksteady. He's also a strong opponent for the Turtles themselves. Shredder also has Baxter Stockman, whom he constantly forces to work for him against his will, but we already talked about him. Finally, he has Karai, who runs the Foot Clan of Japan, but comes to New York later to assist him. Karai is the most loyal and deadly on Shredder's side, since he raised and
Yeah, in
trained
the
her
80s
himself.
cartoon, they tried to have a
However,
character
unlike
that
the
was
rest, she's
kind of
not
like
really
Karai
evil.
one
She's just
episode,
loyal
but
to the Shredder since she loves him as if he were her father. But where did Shredder come from? Well, after Shredder gets his head cut off by Leonardo but still manages
oh
to
yeah,
get
that's
up,
where a
we
lot of
know
people
he's
got
not
mad.
human. Eventually, he reveals his true form. Now I know what you're thinking. Shredder is really Krang? To answer your question, no. Everyone says the new Shredder is really Krang, but they couldn't be more incorrect. He's not Krang, he's an Utrom. Aliens that
Well,
came
in a
out
way,
of the
they're
original
right,
comics
because
in
Crane
1985,
is
2
an
years before Krang
Utrom,
made
in
his
a way.
debut in the cartoon in 1987. The Utroms were an alien race who lived on Earth for years disguised as humans using special robotic suits that they controlled from within the torso, almost like Krang's robotic body. Unlike Krang, the Utroms weren't evil. They just crash-landed on Earth years ago and just want to examine humans.
In a
and go
way,
home. It's
they're kind of
interesting to
right.
note that the Utroms are responsible for the Turtles' mutation. As it turns out, the canister of ooze that mutated the Turtles was actually made by the Utroms themselves in their experiments. Although the Utroms never appear in the classic cartoon, Krang was the closest thing to one. Shredder's true name is actually Chirel, an alien criminal who's wanted all over the galaxy for his crimes on other planets. But if you insist on calling him Krang, you should note that Krang makes an appearance in the show as one of the regular Utroms. This was a plot twist a lot of people didn't like, and some even thought that when this was revealed, the show had seriously jumped the shark. Despite the show following the original comics, Shredder was human in those, so this was something exclusive to the 2003 cartoon.
Well, this is part of the same one, so that never bothered me.
In the 2003 series, it
Never
turns
bothered
out
me.
the reason why the Utroms crash-landed on Earth was because of Chirel. They crash-landed in Japan, where Chirel stole one of their robotic bodies for himself and used it to become the Shredder and lead the Foot Clan. The Utroms formed their own little alliance against the Shredder, and Hamato Yoshi became part of it, which is why Shredder killed him. But then things get even more complicated. It turns out that before Chirel became the Shredder, there was already another Shredder. The original Shredder was a demon who terrorized Japan. A team of 5 was sent to fight him off, one of them being Orokusaki. Orokusaki slayed the demon Shredder, but before it died, Orokusaki allowed the demon to enter his body and the two became one. He became the Shredder and was extremely powerful, so he had to be sealed away. During the time he was sealed away, Chirel took the identity of the Shredder so he could use Shredder's reputation to become feared, respected, and gain more minions to do his dirty work. And to top things off, after the Turtles defeated Shredder, Karai took his place and became a new Shredder to carry on his legacy. There was also a Triceraton Shredder who was supposed to appear in Fast Forward but didn't since the episode never finished production. And a villain from Fast Forward, Viral, became Cyber Shredder for the Back to the Sewers season. As you can see, even if Shredder is defeated, his legacy lives on since someone is always taking his place and continuing his work.
Real Shredder, True Shredder, Ultron Shredder. How many Shredders are there?
So which Shredder is the best Shredder? Let's just compare Classic Shredder to the Ultron Shredder, since the Ultron Shredder was the main villain for the first 3 seasons of the 2003 series and appeared in the most episodes. When the two first met the Turtles, they tried to get them to join the Foot Clan. The Classic Shredder tried to get them to join using the fact that he was the one who tossed the ooze into the sewers, resulting in their mutations and that they owed their lives to him. Naturally, the Turtles didn't accept the offer. In the 2003 series, Shredder comes to Leonardo without his armor on and offers him a sword as a gift while telling him he's been fighting an evil for years and needs Leonardo's assistance to fight it. Now that's how you do it. He even had Leonardo fooled until he learned the truth. They also had a
Fucking
legion
Jedi
of Foot
mind
Clan
trick.
ninjas. The classic Foot Clan ninjas were pretty easy for the Turtles to take care of. They were all robots, opposed to the comics where the ninjas were all humans. This change was done
Well, that's
so
for the
Turtles could hack and
ratings
slash
for-
the Foot Clan ninjas without it being bloody. But this
Exactly.
is funny since when Shredder took over the Foot, he was training humans. But after getting together with Krang, the Foot soldiers were all robots. What happened to the human ones? Were they all fired or something? The 2003 Shredder has more kinds of Foot ninjas. He has the regular
Vince McMahon
Foot ninjas,
fired him.
he has the Foot Tech ninjas, which can turn invisible, and he has the Foot Elites, which are higher-ranked Foot ninjas and are much stronger. All of these were human who were specially trained, but he also had the Foot Mech ninjas and the Cry bots, which were robots. Unlike the classic Foot ninjas, sometimes these Foot soldiers were strong and skilled enough to give the Turtles a hard time. In fact, in one episode, the Cry bots succeed in killing Michelangelo. Now we know these ninjas are much more efficient.
Same as it never
the classic
was.
Shredder didn't have just foot soldiers. He
That's
also
the name
had
of the
Krang's rock
episode.
soldiers and dozens of robotic minions under his command. He also got assistance from Dimension X and other weird-looking mutants. You might be wondering why I didn't make a separate comparison for the Foot Ninjas. They appeared in both shows after all, and I obviously prefer one group over the other. Well, the Foot Ninjas aren't standalone villains. They were always being led by Shredder in both shows, and for the most part, weren't seen acting on their own accord. They didn't even have any real personalities and rarely even speak. Sure, in one episode of the classic series, the Foot Soldiers rebel, and meanwhile in the 2003 series, the Foot Soldiers acted on their own while the Shredder was gone in the City at War episodes, but it's still not enough to call them independent. Again, most of the time they're just Foot Soldiers working under Shredder without any say and end up getting beaten up by the Turtles. I just thought I'd compare them while comparing Shredder since in both incarnations, they're under his command. The classic Shredder was also a bit of a pushover. I mean, despite being a so-called ninja master, he was defeated in humiliating yet funny ways, and rather quickly too. Not to mention, he wasn't really threatening or taken seriously for that matter. The 2003 Shredder, on the other hand, was just a much bigger challenge for the Turtles themselves, always giving them a beating when he appeared. Despite, like the classic Shredder, he's always getting defeated, he's always defeated in a much more dramatic, over-the-top fashion. He gets pushed off a building, he gets his head cut off by Leonardo, he gets impaled by an energy drill, and so on. Each time it implies that Shredder is dead until he returns in some shape or form. Sort of like a monster that despite being killed off by the end of the movie, he keeps coming back for more sequels. So after all this, you must be thinking I prefer the 2003 Shredder and that the 2003 series is going to earn another point. Well, unfortunately, no. I actually prefer the older Shredder. Sure, the 2003 Shredder is a much more challenging enemy for the Turtles, but in the end he's nothing more than a cliché bad guy. The classic Shredder, on the other hand, felt like a parrot.
A cliche bad guy? That's who the Shredder is, though. I mean, the Shredder... What? How are you supposed... First off, he can't... He's cliche, but you have this old backstory about how he's really an alien inside of him, and how he took this other thing to... There's an alien inside of him. It is an alien who took the image of Shredder to get more power and fear, so they do his bidding. I don't think that part is cliche, because I don't know many fucking movies and shows that did exactly that. And the Shredder...
Of all those bad guy cliches, and that's what made him fun. Sure, the 2003 Shredder is badass, but I can't help but find him ridiculous. The classic Shredder was much more original, trying to pass off as powerful and threatening, but in the end proving he's as threatening as a kid. Despite his team and gear not being as efficient as the 2003 Shredders, I still like them a lot.
So Shredder, you could say that is a cliche of any of those 80s cartoon villains that are supposed to be intimidating and scary, but they're pushovers, and you can name countless 80s cartoons that have had villains of that nature. Let alone 90s cartoons, where they act tough but they're really a pushover.
That better. I'll take the Technodrome over 2003 Shredder's Big Business Building any day. Also, I'll take Bebop and Rocksteady over Hun any day. And despite liking the 2003 Baxter Stockman, Krang is the one true brain that deserves to assist Shredder. The only things I prefer from the 2003 Shredder are his foot ninjas and that he has Karai, who's a great character. I will give the 2003 Shredder credit for having much more exciting fight scenes with the Turtles, while the classic Shredder's fights were not really impressive. And again, classic Shredder is hilarious, especially when he interacts with Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady.
I fast forward through these scenes.
Earth bakeries will be wiped out. Not a single cheese Danish will remain. They'll all be ours.
Cheese Danish?
We are 1,000 miles below the surface of the Earth. Do you realize how hard it is to get a decent snack down here?
In the final seasons of the series, Shredder became much more serious, and while still a good villain for the Turtles, he lost the charm he had throughout the rest of the series. Actually, he didn't appear as much in the final seasons because he was replaced with a new villain named Lord Dreg. Now, Lord Dreg was a great villain too, because while people knew Shredder was a bad guy, Dreg lied to humanity and made himself seem like a good guy, offering world peace and such. Not only did he have people fooled, but he also convinced them that the Turtles were evil. This made him a much more dangerous foe for the Turtles than Shredder could ever be. The 2003 Shredder, while I admit the 2003 series just wouldn't be Ninja Turtles without him, I don't care for that much. The 2003 series has some much more interesting villains than him, such as Bishop. Bishop has a much better backstory and can take on all four Turtles by himself. Sure, Shredder can do that too, but Shredder needs his armor and his claws to do that. And sometimes he needs assistance from others, such as Karai.
Like every fucking iteration of Shredder needed his armor to do that. And you said yourself that the 80s Shredder got his ass kicked by fucking pizza pies.
Bishop, on the other hand, can take on all four Turtles and others at the same time wearing only a suit.
Dude, this is your weakest argument yet.
You have no idea what you're up against.
The guy even becomes president of the future. Now that's awesome. Now, back on topic. I think the 2003 Shredder is an okay villain, but he's too typical. The classic Shredder, on the other hand, is a much more original and memorable villain. So are Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady, for that matter. Those four will always be my favorite villains from Ninja Turtles. Even though
Krang sucks, Bebop and Rocksteady are overrated, and I like Shredder mainly for the voice actor.
Peter Laird may want to beat me over the head for saying this, classic Shredder to me will always be my favorite incarnation of Shredder. For that, the classic series deserves another point.
Zeros in a half shell, turtle power.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the villain segment of the Ninja...
I was with him for a while, and okay, I did pick in the 80s Shredder, like I said, for some of his personality, but to say that the 2003 Shredder is weak, for the reasons he did, not weak, but his reasoning, I thought, I disagree very much so. And of all the comparisons, I think this is the weakest one he's done. That's just me. But yeah, I get to the second video, so we'll see you in a bit. Hey, continuing the video for Edward. He wanted me the second part of this. This one's 16 minutes long. I know I'm not commenting a lot because I don't really know what to say, because it's pretty much him explaining the information that I already know, so it's not like, oh, I'm surprised by it. But, yeah.
Round 8. Battle cries. Now you may be thinking, why the hell would I even make this into a round? But we'll have the
Exactly.
2003 Mikey explain it for us.
Part of having a winning attitude is having a cool battle cry. A heroic superhero kind of battle cry, like in the comic books.
Aww, isn't he cute? But if that doesn't convince you, then let me give you my own reasons. For the Turtles, the catchphrases, or battle cries in this case, are what they shout before or during battle, and those get us excited for the action scenes. To me, the battle cries held that charm and excitement to the Ninja Turtles no matter what incarnation it may be. I'm aware that the battle cries are just catchphrases and they're just there to be marketable. But hey, if you're a Turtles fan, then at least in your life you must have said, Cowabunga! Or Turtle Power! Or at least have them written down on your clothing or in your signatures. Either way, people quote these, and you're gonna see them outside the show one way or another. So, which show had the better catchphrases? Who had the better battle cries? Well, let's look at the class.
This seems like I put this in here because I want to give another point to the 80s cartoon. That seems like the only... I don't buy this reason at all. I never said... I mean, yeah, they said Cowabunga, but I never said it out loud, whether at school or anything else in between, but whatever.
Series. Obviously, we had Michelangelo's Cowabunga! Which became the most well-known in the entire series, and ever since he said it, it's been said one way or another in other Turtles media. The video games, the movies, and it even managed to find its way to the 2003 series. The second most well-known battle cry would be which, like Cowabunga, also found its way to other Turtles media. Now that's a battle cry. As cheesy or corny as it sounds, you know when the Turtles said it, you start to cheer for them. They also had other corny yet lovable battle cries, such as Go Green Machine, Let's Turtleize 'em, and of course,
Turtles fight with honor!
Call me a sentimental fool, but I'm just a sucker for that battle cry.
I'm sure there are more from the old series that I forgot to mention, but those are the main ones I remember. Donatello's repetitive, "Aw, that was my favorite bow" gag does not count. And what about the 2003 series? Well, they didn't have an official battle cry or catchphrase from what I see. They had a bunch, as if they couldn't really settle on which one to choose. They had, "I love being a turtle," and various shell puns like, "What the shell?" or "I'm mad as shell." But later on, they did settle on one battle cry. "It's ninja time!" Are you kidding me? That's so lame, it sounds like something they'd say on Naruto.
It's ninja time! Believe it!
Quiet, you. So yeah, as...
Oh yeah, like the ones in the 80s cartoon are not corny either. Come
See, I don't
on.
like the new battle cries much since they're just plain corny. Now don't get me wrong, the battle cries from the older series were corny too, but at least those were fun and could be said with pride. The new ones, on the other hand, don't quite do it for me.
Because they didn't try to have it, really.
So when it comes to some of the coolest battle cries and catchphrases ever, I say the classic series scores again.
I did. He just threw that in there,
Round 9,
just
voice
to.
acting. Now for the people who use their voice talents to help bring our favorite characters to life and give them personality. The classic series had a ton of memorable voice actors who've appeared in many more cartoons and media. Michelangelo was voiced by Townsend Coleman.
Wouldn't that really? I mean, in comparison of the characters, wouldn't the voice be a part of that? That's just me.
Who was also the voice of the Tick. Donatello and Bebop were played by Barry Gordon, who's known as the voice of Razor from SWAT Cats and the Rabbit from the Nesquik commercials. Leonardo and Rocksteady were voiced by Ken Clark, who's known for doing the voice of Liquid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid video game series and the voice of Kratos for Tales of Symphonia. Raphael's voice was done by Rob Paulson, who's voiced a lot of cartoon characters over the years. And let's not forget the Shredder, who was played by James Avery, who's well known for playing Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Rest in peace, James
He's my
Avery.
personal favorite of all of them. His voice of Shredder was absolutely perfect. He could sound either very evil or very silly, depending on the episode. And hey, it's Uncle Phil. You can't go wrong with Uncle Phil. Or can you?
Why even put that on there? So it's a drawing of Uncle Phil behind the Will Smith character. Why even put that in there? It's a stupid, lame, disgusting joke. Now, maybe this was done before James Avery passed away, but I just... Like, you stopped the video for just a stupid fucking joke.
Cummings was also in this show as Leatherhead and at one point the voice of Shredder. Like Rob Paulsen, he also voiced many cartoon characters, sometimes even starring alongside Rob Paulsen in shows like Goof Troop and Bump in the Night. The classic series also had other
Oh god, I forgot about Bump in the Night.
Major characters still played characters nonetheless. Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime, voiced a karate dojo teacher. Let me repeat that. The voice of Optimus Prime was in the classic Ninja Turtles series. That alone is enough to have the classic series win. But to be fair, let's compare the voices from the 2003 series before we jump to a verdict here. The newer series had Leonardo played by Michael Sinterniclass, who plays Dean Venture on The Venture Brothers, Zelos on Slayers, Loopy, and Noitra Jiruga in the dub of Bleach. It's also interesting to note that Cam Clark plays a character in Bleach as well, by the name of Yosochika Iamura.
So we're just listing their credits?
Both Leonardos are in the Bleach dub. That's kinda cool. Donatello is played by Sam Riegel, who is the voice of Viral from Gurren Lagann.
So we're just naming the voices and listing the
and
credits.
Steve from Resident Evil, The Darkside Chronicles. Michelangelo is done by
I don't know how
who
that's...
voiced a handful of characters for the various
That's a
Yu-Gi-Oh
very... This is a very
shows, and
weird...
a few characters from Kinnikuman Nisei, or Ultimate Muscle as it's called here in the States. Finally, Raphael was voiced by Frank Frankson, also known as John Campbell, who's known as the voice for Terry Kenyon in Ultimate Muscle and Tristan of the first Yu-Gi-Oh series. Now granted, the 4Kids voice cast is pretty good. I especially adore Veronica Taylor as April O'Neil. But how are they when it actually comes to acting? Well, in the classic tune, the voice acting wasn't anything amazing, but if you ask me, it got the job done. Michelangelo and Donatello's voices were my favorite of the Turtles, but I think Krang had the best voice acting. I still wonder how the voice actor, Pat Fraley, made some of those noises Krang did while he was talking. But sometimes the voice acting did sound awkward, but usually when a voice actor was replaced with someone else for the episode. The replacements either didn't match or just did a crappy job of playing the character altogether. And despite the fact that I like Jim Cummings, there were times when he sounded pretty bad as the Shredder. Raphael also had two other voice actors aside from Rob Paulsen. The first was Hal Rail, who voiced Raphael for the European Vacation season, who sounded pretty crappy. The second was Michael Goh, who voiced
That'd be really interesting, and in that Ninja Turtles documentary, if it was worth shit, it would have been cool if someone asked, hey, by the way, how come you didn't voice those European episodes of the Ninja Turtles? Rob Paulsen? Was there some kind of contractual dispute? Was there something else going on? And the other person who voiced Raphael, were you, hey, cool, I got to voice it for a little bit? Were there talks of replacing you over Rob Paulsen for the rest of the show? But hey, no.
For the final season
Can't
of
ask those
Turtles,
questions.
and he was actually pretty decent. As for the 2003 series, well, for the most part, the voice acting was pretty good. Raph and April were my favorites, but my real favorite voice was Bishop. He just sounds so cool. I also like the voices of characters played by Greg Carey, such as Hun, Traximus, and Leatherhead, since he has that cool, deep, big guy voice. However, once in a while, the voice acting was so bad it was funny.
It is time to pay for your crimes, Shredder.
For some reason, that always makes me laugh. Other times, the voices can just get annoying, like Michelangelo.
You tell me there wasn't any... That wasn't even a main character. There are plenty of little characters in the 80s cartoon that you could do the same thing. Look at all the different creatures and little monsters and goofy stuff that the Turtles went up to in the 80s cartoon that you could get the same thing out of. Like, come on, dude.
I do admit, his girly screams were kind of funny. But the most annoying is Sean Schemmel. To be fair, I have nothing against him. I actually grew up watching Dragon Ball Z as a kid, with him as the voice of Goku. And I still think he did a pretty good job. He voiced a few characters in the Ninja Turtles 2003 series, and while he did do a decent job with some of them, others sounded rather awkward or annoying.
We
Well, I don't need those bunch of losers anyway. You're all going down, because I'm Ditko. Say hello to my little friend.
I have never heard someone make a black character sound so white before. So who were the better voice actors? Well, I gotta say I prefer the ones from the classic series. Now don't get me wrong, I still like the ones from the 2003 series, but I prefer a lot of the voices from the classic cartoons, such as Michelangelo's, Shredder's, Splinter's, and others compared to the port.
Okay, you said they were okay, and then you said the 2003 was pretty good. It's like now you're changing your story.
Kids' voices. A good example is Splinter. In the 2003 series, he sounds like a regular guy trying to sound like an old wise man. But in the classic
No, he
series,
doesn't.
he really does sound like an old wise man. I just think that the voice actors in the classic series...
No, he doesn't. What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
...compared to the newer voice actors. Plus,
Fuck are you talking about?
the voice of Optimus freaking Prime was in this show!
Oh my god, I'm gonna come on Optimus. Then don't watch Transformers. Don't come on his face. Go suck his robo dick.
Another point for the classic series.
God, the first two parts, this guy was doing well. Now he's shitting the bed. If you prefer that, fine, but your arguments are getting shittier as it goes along. Peter Cullen voice a random character. So fucking what? Fuck are you doing?
Round 10. Music. Now for the background music. I know I already gave a point to the classic series earlier for its theme song, but this round is for the background music.
That should be the same fucking thing, dude. Again, now you're just stretching things out, because I would not be surprised at the end of the day this becomes like a tie.
No, what plays in the background of the show when the turtles are fighting or doing pretty much anything else, as well as the general soundtrack.
Come on
The classic
now.
series has some rather memorable tracks, such as the Technodrome
I'll
theme,
give you the 80s
instrumental
cartoon had better
version of the theme
music.
song
I've
with
always
flavor
said
and action
that.
scenes, which always
The
got us
2003
excited.
cartoon,
Pretty good
the
stuff,
big flaw
but not
is
exactly
the
something
music.
you'd want to put on your iPod and jam to. As for the second series, the music is alright. At times it tries to sound Japanese to give the show a more ninja-esque feel, which is very appropriate, especially when Shredder and the Foot Ninjas appear, or when
By the way, did he ever go into animation? I'm trying to remember if he did before. Lighting,
Splinter is on screen.
character
Once in a while,
development.
the show would try to have songs with lyrics of its own, such as the one in the first part of the three-part episode, City at War. Or the song in the episode, April's Artifact.
In this world, you got to be willing. It's a jungle out. It's a jungle out.
These songs were rather cheesy. They felt rather unnecessary, but that's just me. The Japanese version, on the other hand, had a pretty good soundtrack. The theme songs and the ending themes changed every season, much like how they do in most anime. And these were actually much better than the American theme songs of the 2003 series. I especially like Everybody, Everybody, Everybody. So which show had the better soundtrack? Well, I already gave the classic series a point for their theme song, since Lord knows I freaking love that theme song. But what about the other tracks? Well, in all honesty, I'd have to say I prefer the music from the classic series. No offense, I do like the music for the 2003 series, but most of the time it's not very memorable or unique, and sometimes it could feel rather stock. The music for the classic series was much more memorable, and in the process, helped the Ninja Turtles themselves stick out more from other cartoons, and made the series unique as well. The music for the 2003 series unfortunately lacks that effect. For example, if you were to use the background music for the 2003 series in another show, I doubt you'd be able to point out that it's from Ninja Turtles right away. But put the background music for the classic series
Again, we already talked about the music with the theme. That should be in one category.
There is one soundtrack that tops both shows that I can honestly find myself jamming to. The original Turtles in Time soundtrack. Of course, giving the point to the game would be rather unfair, so once again, when it comes to music, I'll have to say the classic series scores another point. Round 11.
Well, there you go.
Style and animation.
Style and
Like
animation.
any other cartoon, both had their own style of animation with their own unique charm that coincided with the time that they were made. The classic series was done with hand-drawn and hand-painted cells. I already stated the first 5 episodes were done by Toei, and for the most part the animation was rather well done, especially for the action scenes. In my opinion, these episodes had the best fight scenes in the entire series.
I agree with
However,
that.
the rest of the series wasn't done by Toei, and I felt the action scenes really suffered. In fact, I feel that as the show went on, there was a period when the animation kept getting worse and worse before getting better. Characters and fight scenes looked stiff and awkward, lip flaps didn't fit the dialogue, and sometimes there was no movement at all. And of course, there were the infamous scenes where the turtles are seen or heard with the wrong mask color, voice, or weapons. Funny thing is, I personally feel these errors gave the classic series more of a unique charm, and at times were even rather amusing, adding to the humor.
Come on, dude. Now that's like nostalgia talking or something. Like, you saying the actual mistakes give it a charm.
But I also feel that because of these...
See, we got 2 Raphaels here. We got 2... You can't see, but it's 2 blue, 2 Leonardos, 2 Raphaels. Wait a minute, why is there 5 turtles? There's 5 turtles.
It also made the series suffer as well. It made the episodes seem rushed and even rather sloppy. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't look at the finished product of some of these episodes, since some of the animation could look rather questionable at times. But eventually mistakes like these became less common during the second half of Season 7 and beyond.
Because people were not
That's when we got
pausing
the
like
Red Sky
that back in the
episodes for
day.
the final 3 seasons. The animation was much better, but still the action scenes were nowhere as good as the first season. Still, the errors were much more rare and a lot less obvious, so it looked like a much better job overall. The animation, new story, and the subject matter for the final 3 seasons actually reminded me a lot of X-Men. You know, mutants who are trying to do good, but wonder what's the point of it all if humans do nothing but judge and hate them. Funny connection, since one of the inspirations for the original TMNT comic book was the New Mutants from Marvel, which was a spin-off of X-Men. Now for the 2003 series. Early in the countdown, I praised it for having spectacular animation, but a lot of people said that the new animation seems too clunky or stiff. I could see why they think that for the later seasons, as the animations and style changed up to be less detailed, slower, and overall easier to draw for animators. I could even understand why they think that for the first few episodes of Season 1, but the show was still getting started. Action scenes weren't anything too special yet, and the fights didn't really start to get good until later. Despite that, however,
That shot alone is more stylistic. What are you talking about?
Smooth, detailed, and fluent. While regular scenes with the characters just talking weren't much to look at, the action scenes were impressive with a lot going on. And while not
This is
really
people
all that
talking.
creative,
It's people talking. What do you expect? Them to be talking and to be moving like this while they're talking? Like, come on.
to look at. The characters had quick movement, moving swiftly and flexibly like actual ninja.
Yeah, I agree with
Animation
that.
was also stylish and rather anime-like and comic book-like at the same time.
Yeah, I agree.
The colors were often dark with lots of shading, so that way it can look like the original comic book, which was also dark in terms of artwork and style. The fight scenes also made use of a lot of flashy backgrounds.
And that was in the first episode or so that you were just complaining about.
It's funny how a lot of people don't like the animation for the 2003 series, saying that it looks too much like anime. Meanwhile, the first 5 episodes and opening theme for the classic series were technically anime, and it even used similar effects as well. It was rare that they ever made animation errors, or at least errors that were noticeable. The only one I ever stumbled across was during the second season. At this point in the episode, the turtles' weapons had been taken from them, but you can clearly see that they still had their weapons on their backs. Shortly afterwards, we see their allies handing the turtles the weapons. As I said, I'm sure there were numerous other errors, but I doubt they were nearly as noticeable as ones in the classic series, or as common for that matter. After the first 5 seasons, though, Fast Forward came along, followed by Back to the Sewers. The characters were redesigned for both seasons, and new people took over the direction of the show. Personally, I was not impressed with the style change or new animation. While it was still crisp, clean, and smooth, the action scenes didn't feel as exciting or creative, being too brief or nothing special. The style went from dark...
I still like Fast Forward, but yeah, there was a step down in terms of the look and the lighting. I do agree with that.
When Back to the Sewers came along,
But I just like seeing them in the future. I thought it was a nice different environment.
And despite being back in New York, The show was bright and colorful as Fast Forward. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it did kind of take away from the look and feel the show had established for the first 5 seasons. But if I had to choose something, I'd have to say I like the animation for the 2003 series, but only for the first 5 seasons. True, I prefer hand-drawn cells to digital pictures, and I'm always praising Season 1 of the classic series for its animation, but that was just for 5 episodes. Afterwards, as I said, they went downhill. Meanwhile, the 2003 series gave us 5 full seasons of great animation before that went downhill. I feel that since the Ninja Turtles is supposed to be an action cartoon, then the show with the better animated action should win this round. Point goes to the 2003 series.
It's funny, he says the Ninja Turtles should be an action cartoon. That's what he said. Well, this is more of an action cartoon than this, if that's the case. So, and actually, this is for another one. But, yeah, it was, there you go. So, I don't know what else to say. It's the guy's opinion. No, don't get mad at the guys. Well, I did get, but in all seriousness, it's the guy's opinion. In the heat of the moment, I say stuff, but, yeah, I disagree with some of his splitting the theme and the music. I'm like, usually when we talk about movies, we talk about the whole theme of the music, including the score and the theme song. I felt like we got to split that up to give more points to the 80s cartoon to make it even by the end. I disagree with his thoughts on the 2003 Shredder being cliche. I mean, didn't you just say the 80s Shredder's cliche based on other characters of that era with that type of villainous cartoon, but he's also comedic. There's a lot of cartoons where the villain is, he wants to be a bad guy, but he's comedic. But, I mean, whatever. To each their own. But with that said, thanks once again, Edward. Hope you enjoy. If not, sorry about that. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.